What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. I am the Hobbyist, and today we are going to be doing a servo swap on my team associated Rc8.2e. In the process, we are going to convert it to run on a high voltage system. So, going to be a lot of fun. We got some new parts to install, and overall, it's going to be an interesting time. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, the whole reason I'm doing this conversion is mainly to speed up the steering, because right now the steering is pretty slow on it. In fact, let me show you guys exactly how slow I'm talking here. I've got the battery, I run it on a 4-cell LiPo here, plug it in. The sound you're hearing is the fans, sorry about that. But if you look at the steering, it is pretty slow. So that speed of a servo is fine for like a rock crawler, but it's not really good enough for something that's going 50 miles an hour off-road. So I have got this. This is a JX EcoBoost CLS-6336 high voltage servo. It can run on 7.4 volts, and if we look right here, it can do, it's kind of blurry here. The torque at 7.4 volts is 36.6 kilograms per centimeter, and the speed is 0.11 seconds. So much faster than this Power HD, which is, I think it's 0.12 actually on 6 volts. However, I recently found out that the default Castle BEC setting is 5 volts. So it's been running really slow, and it's had minimal torque. So I'm going to take this servo out. I'm still going to use it. I'm going to put it in a different vehicle, and you'll see that in a later video. But I'm going to upgrade this servo, and then in order for it to be able to run on high voltage, I have to swap out these fans because they can't take high voltage. So I have some Racing high voltage turbo fans, so we're going to be installing those as well. But let's get started by just removing the old servo. So here we have the steering set up right now, and I'm gonna remove the servo first of all. I'll show you, the servo works fine, but it's just slow, and part of that was I didn't know that the Castle BEC was running on such a low voltage at the time. But let's get this servo removed. Alright, so I've got the Power HD servo out right here. This is the Power HD WP23 kg servo, obviously 23 kilograms per centimeter of torque, fully waterproof. Yeah, it's a good servo, and I wish I had found out sooner that the voltage was what was holding it back so much, but that's okay. This is going to get a new home very soon. Now, the servo I'm upgrading it to is this, the JX CLS-6336. It is faster, it has way more torque. The only problem it has, it's even coreless, it's got a coreless motor in it. The only problem with it is it's not waterproof. I think it's water resistant, and thankfully I don't really do a lot of wet driving. I try to avoid that. So this shouldn't be too much of an issue, but that is kind of one con of this servo, is that it is not waterproof, it's just water resistant. But really nice. Fully aluminum case, coreless motor, as I said. So this is going to be what is going in to this buggy. So I think it is about time to put this in. But before I do that, I am going to remove the wires for the fans real quick, because they're not going to be there. So I'm going to remove those and save myself some time before I install this. So I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll put you guys back on when I've done that. Alright, so I pulled out the plugs for the fans. These are 2 wires, and they have to go into this little splitter to connect them into one port on the receiver. Having those out of the way is going to be a major advantage. These fans, they are 2 fans that wire into one plug, so that's going to cut down on the amount of wires that are actually in this receiver box. But now I'm going to put the fans aside. We'll work on those in a second. Now it is time to install the new servo. So I'm going to do another time lapse and we'll get to it. Alright, so I've got the new servo installed, so now I guess it's time to make sure everything is centered. So since the fans are disconnected, it won't be nearly as noisy at the moment, except when you hear the Castle fan kick in for a second. So let's plug this in. Alright, I heard the servo adjust. Alright. She is running very nicely, nice and smooth. So, before I put on the steering arm, I am going to connect up the two fans, and that's simply just to make life a little bit easier for putting this on, because it's easier to put the receiver box on before you put the steering arm on. So, let's swap out the fans. So these are Yeah Racing fans. As I mentioned, high voltage turbo fans is I believe what Yeah Racing calls them. And they look pretty good. They're 30 by 30 by 10 millimeter fans. Hang on, let me unplug this so that you guys don't have to hear the beeping. So anyway, 30 by 30 by 10 millimeter fans, and they can take up to 8.4 volts, I believe. This isn't real carbon fiber, that's just a sticker. So I'm going to swap these ones out. These are the stock Power Hobby fans that came with this heatsink, but I love this system, so I'm going to keep the heatsink and then put just different fans on it. So I'm going to do that and put you guys back on. Alright, so I got the old fans removed and the new Yeah Racing ones installed. This is mainly just so that I don't burn out my fans. So I'm going to route the wires in the same way that I did the standard ones through here, because it goes around the pinion gear since this is exposed. And I'll do some zip ties here and there to keep everything clean. And after I've done that, I will put the receiver box cover back on, and then I'll put you guys on for assembling the steering arm. Alright, so I have gotten the fans wired up, so now I guess it's time to do a quick test to make sure that they work. So turn on the radio, turn on these. Wow, those are certainly pulling in some air. Alright, I can't tell if that's blowing onto the heatsink or trying to draw air away from it. But anyway, the fans definitely work, so that's good. The steering is good. So now it is time to get the steering centered. So the servo is now centered. I've got all my trim set to 0, so now we're going to try and get the steering as close to straight as possible. Yeah, as close to straight as possible, which is about here. I don't know. You kind of have to work with wherever it falls onto the spline. Right, that's too much. There's got to be one like right in here. Oh, there we go. That's pretty good. So this is a hot racing clamping servo horn. So what I have to do is tighten up this screw first to clamp the servo horn on, and then take the main screw and screw it onto the top like so. And with this tightened up, I've already got some thread locker on that screw, so that's good. Being coreless, there's very little resistance when there's no power to it, but when we give power to it, we should see a pretty good result. All right, so let's plug in the battery, and hopefully you guys can hear me all right, but let's check the steering. Yeah, it's pretty slow at the moment, but it's quieter. But the reason for that is because it is running on 5 volts. It is time to now up the ante and set this up to 7.4 volts or high voltage running. Whoops. Now, there is a slight hitch to this plan. I do not own the Castle Link computer module, and that's the only way you can change the BEC voltage on this. So I am going to have to take this down to my local hobby shop where they can program. I've taken multiple things to there, and they have helped me reprogram it using Castle Link. So I'm going to take it down. I probably won't get there today, but in the next few days. But for what is days for me will be seconds for you guys, and I'll put you guys back on in the future once I have gotten back from the hobby shop. Alright guys, so it has been a few days since that last clip, and I have since gone to the hobby shop and had the Castle Mamba Monster X converted over to high voltage. While I was there, I also picked up a different servo horn. This is now a factory team servo horn, and the reason for that is because the hot racing one was a little bit too short, and when I was turning hard left, it was actually rubbing, and I just didn't want that. And I also realized that my steering links were in the wrong direction, so I fixed that as well. But now with high voltage, I'm sure you're probably wanting to see the result, so the results speak for themselves. With high voltage, the steering is now much faster. The steering is actually so powerful that it is shaking the workbench. I wish you guys could see that. And as you can see, it is actually moving the buggy, all this movement. So as you can see, the high voltage has made a significant difference in the performance of this servo. So guys, if you do decide to purchase the servo, I definitely recommend running it on high voltage because the performance on high voltage is much, much better. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment in the section below for what videos you'd like to see next. This is my 4th JX servo upgrade, and I've really liked these servos, so I'm pretty much just converting my fleet to JX servos. But anyway, I will put a link to where you can purchase this servo in the description down below. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.